prosecution calls former Congresswoman Elizabeth Holtzman to the stand.
Ms. Holtzman, thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you.
Would you tell us briefly about your background and experience?
I'm a lawyer. I was elected to Congress in 1972. I served on the House Judiciary Committee during the impeachment proceedings against Richard Nixon. Subsequent to that, I served in Congress to 1981, then became district attorney of Kings County for 8 years, and then controller of New York City. I'm in the private practice of law now.
Thank you, Ms. Holtzman. Were you a member of the House Judiciary Committee that issued articles of impeachment against Richard Nixon?
Yes, and I voted for all of them.
What were those articles, and what was the basis for them?
There were 3 articles of impeachment that were approved by the House Judiciary Committee, although there were a few others that were voted and rejected, that were offered and rejected. The articles that were adopted by the House Judiciary Committee on a bipartisan basis were, first, an article charging the president, in essence, with obstruction of justice by using the powers of his office to thwart lawful inquiries into the Watergate burglary and its cover-up. The second article of impeachment was that the president abused the powers of his office in many ways, including the misuse of agencies of the federal government for unlawful purposes or purposes that had nothing to do with the actual purposes of government, that they were done for purposes of enhancing his own political status or to obstruct investigations. But there were other abuses of power that were noted. For example, the president illegally used wiretaps against newspaper reporters and against former staff members and actual staff members of the White House, and hid those wiretaps out of the regular channels. The president ratified break-in into the office of Dr. Ellsberg's psychiatrist. The president sought to use information from the IRS to harass political enemies. The third article of impeachment had to do with the fact that the president stonewalled our impeachment inquiry and refused to turn over hundreds of tapes and documents that we requested.
Let's hear briefly from James D. St. Clair, Richard Nixon's counsel, arguing before the Supreme Court.
The president wants me to argue that he is as powerful a monarch as Louis XIV, only 4 years at a time, and is not subject to the processes of any court in the land except the court of impeachment.
Ms. Holtzman, do you see any parallels with the situation today?
Oh yes, we have George W. Bush, who believes that he is above the law and has behaved in that manner, whether it's refusing to obey the laws on torture, the treaty, the Geneva Conventions, or the U.S. statutes prohibiting the commission of war crimes and the commission of torture, whether it's ignoring the law, the FISA law on wiretapping, which prohibits the president from authorizing wiretapping without a court order, and he did this explicitly being told by his top people at the Justice Department that his actions, that the wiretapping he was about to authorize were illegal. He nonetheless went ahead and did that. His instructions to his former staff to stonewall the Congress by refusing to obey subpoenas, his invocation of executive privilege for reasons that seem to be, on the face of it, maybe there's some good reason, but on the face of it seem to be efforts to obstruct lawful inquiries into improper conduct in the White House. Just for starters. Not to mention the lying to the American people to drive us into a war, taking into his own hands the war-making powers which are given both to the president and to Congress.
In 1978, President Carter signed the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, and he appended a signing statement to it which stated the following.
President Jimmy Carter, the bill requires for the first time a prior judicial warrant of all electronic surveillance for foreign intelligence or counterintelligence purposes in the United States in which communications of U.S. persons might be intercepted. In short, the act helps to solidify the relationship of trust between the American people
Ms. Holtzman, it seems that President Carter's signing statement was appended to actually underscore the importance of following the law. Would you say that it is a fair characterization, and is that how other presidents have used signing statements?
Well, generally in the past, certainly it was true when I was in Congress, signing statements were there to help explain the statute and to clarify, if there were certain ambiguities, clarify the meaning of the statute for purposes of allowing people to follow the law. I think it's unknown for a president to say in a signing statement, by the way, this law doesn't apply to me. I mean, that's very nice to know, but he can't take the law into his own hands. And if he doesn't like a law, there's a procedure spelled out in the Constitution, which says if you don't like the law, you can veto it. And then Congress has to override that veto. And if it does, it becomes law. And the Constitution, by law, requires him to obey the law. It says the president must take care that the laws be faithfully executed. So it's a double whammy: take care and faithfully execute the laws. So the president can't say, I'm the president, the laws don't apply to me. This is a first. I mean, I remember when Jimmy Carter appended a signing statement to the ratification deadline extension for the Equal Rights Amendment, and he did so clarifying that he believed that Congress had acted lawfully and appropriately, but never, in my judgment or understanding, to undo what Congress and he, the president, were doing by signing something into law.
Ms. Holtzman, is President Bush's use of signing statements an impeachable offense?
And that's a tricky question, because if the president says, I'm not going to obey the law, is the mere speech a crime or an impeachable offense? But in fact, if he doesn't obey the law, it surely is. The problem is that there's no way that Congress can possibly monitor his execution of all the laws. I mean, there's no way. There's not enough time in the day. There's not enough energy. There's not enough. You can't possibly follow the president around to make sure that he actually is obeying every single law or violating the laws as he says he is. So, in theory, it may not be an impeachable offense, but if he doesn't obey the law, it surely is an impeachable offense. So that's where I come out on that.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Holtzman. As we move further, we will examine whether and how President Bush has acted on his signing statements. Thank you for your testimony.